רמקול בלוטוס דוקו.
All right, so this week we're talking about Tamar, because we're continuing on our theme of woman in Tanakh. Parsha, but I don't think she's getting her wish so quickly.
I know, it's so exciting.
Anyways, so Tamar is the daughter of Shem, and the granddaughter of Noah.
No, I didn't know that.
The daughter of
Shem.
She is?
Yeah,
How come no one ever told me that before?
because it's not well known. No one really
I
thinks
feel like
about
I
who
just found
she's
out
the
I was
daughter
I know,
of.
I always wondered who she was.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's gonna come up in the class.
She was 200 years old?
Yeah, she was 140 apparently. There is
She
some
watched
discussion
every day.
whether
She
she was
kept her good shape.
actually
Okay.
daughter
She
of
had
Shem or
lots of
descendant. They actually, it does, someone does say that she is the actual daughter of Shem. You can
She's
just,
the daughter of Shem?
Yeah.
And the granddaughter of Noah. Unbelievable.
in any case, she's at least a descendant of Shem. If you don't want to believe that she's 140, then she's at least a descendant of Shem
Okay.
from his house. Right? She married into the house of Yaakov. The story of Tamar is kind of intertwined with the story of Yehudah. They're very much together with the story of Yehudah. They're very much together, but not quite as much as Dinah and Yaakov. Versus Dinah didn't really have any choice in her what happened to her because it was all Yaakov's fault, as we discussed last week. Tamar's choices were much more her choices, as we will see. Anyways, so this story of Tamar and Yehudah actually has a lot of supernatural stuff happening in it. Kind of a little bit like Dinah and Yaakov, but less so. You're gonna see like it's a little bit weird what happened. The whole story took place within 22 years. Yosef was sold and was gone for 22 years. In that time period, Yehudah gets married, has children, marries off his children to Tamar, his children die, and he marries Tamar and has children. It's a little bit weird because then it also says that his son has children and they're counting the souls that go down to Egypt, but apparently it took place within 22 years.
Which
Parrots.
His son with Tamar.
Yeah, parrots had children that were counted among the souls that went down to Egypt, among the 70 souls. Just a little bit strange because he couldn't have been more than 9, but this is what we're told. Anyways, what is the meaning of Tamar? So the Or Torah brings down that Tamar means Tam, Tet Mem, like Yaakov is whole, pure, innocent, and the Mar means bitter. Don't know why they translated it that way, but that's how they translate it. So. All right. So, do you guys ever wonder why she was sentenced to death by burning? Like,
Seemed extreme.
right? It's a little weird, right? Like, she wasn't even married at the time. She didn't technically do anything wrong, but it says because she's the daughter of a Kohen, otherwise known as daughter of shame, that she was sentenced to death for adultery. And we learn this from, it says in Vayikra, this is one of the laws, your daughter of a Kohen, and you commit indecent act, you were sentenced to death by burning, especially if you're engaged or married at the time.
Later on, that's when we get the.
Yeah, when we get all the commandments and all the halachas, this is, but they say we learn it from this incident, and this is where it comes. So the custom server actually asked, how is it that she's daughter? Like, 40 years old. But if she was not the daughter of shame, but a descendant, why would she be liable to burn at the stake if she was not the daughter of a Kohen? Because only daughters of Kohanim get this punishment. Shame's descendants lost the Kuna, was given over to Levi, right? We know this, yeah?
But that was not yet. Right?
It actually not clear if it was not yet, but we assume that Levi has the Kahuna. And that Shame's descendants lost the Kahuna. He was the only Kohen in his family. It actually does say that he was the only one who had the Kahuna, and afterwards his descendants lost it. They were not as righteous.
We don't even know who they were, really.
Yeah. See, besides for Amer, we don't really know, but they lost the Kahuna
Yeah, Yaakov was a student.
of Shame, and Amer, who was also a grandson of Shame, or son. I think he was a son. Grandson. Aver. Right. So the Ramban brings in Devarim that there must always be 12 tribes. So now Yosef is lost to them. They sold him. Yaakov thinks he's dead. He's gone. Yaakov's not having more children. So how do we get 12 tribes? So what happens is that the birthright of the firstborn reverts to Reuben, and the Kahuna is taken away from Levi and given back to Shame's descendants. Because even if we have Reuben, who has a double portion, 2 of his sons become tribes, we don't have 12 with Yosef gone. And with Levi being not counted because he has the Kahuna. So the Kahuna is taken away from Levi, given back to Shame at this point, for whatever reason, however it works. And Reuben has the birthright, and then we get back to having 12. All right? Make sense, everybody?
Yeah, who said we describe that?
Is the custom sofer based on a Ramban? Because I like, okay, so we have Levi, but we still don't have 12 without Yosef then. So he had to go look up this Ramban for me and tell me that it's because Reuben gets the double portion. So we have at least 2 tribes coming out of Reuben. All right. So the story of Yehudah and Tamar, especially Yehudah's part of it, had a lot of Mida and Amida in it because of what
There's a lot of what?
Mida connected Mida because of what he did to Yosef. All right. So we're gonna get into that a little bit. Yehudah was considered the leader. He was gonna end up with Malchus, but he was already the leader of his brothers. It wasn't Reuben. Reuben didn't have the respect of his brothers that Yehudah did. So he saved Yosef's life. He didn't sell him. He didn't kill him. He sold him instead, but he lied to his father. And
He was not the second. He was not after Reuben.
He was number 4.
he was 4, but he had leadership qualities.
Mhm.
All right. So the brothers listened to him when they said, "Don't kill him. Let's kill him." All right. So Yehudah's brothers blamed him for what happened with Yosef. They said, if you hadn't told us to sell him, we wouldn't have sold him. If you told us to leave him alone, we would have left him alone. We would have listened to him. Yaakov was inconsolable. They dipped Yosef's coat in blood, showed him that Yosef was dead, right? Like, Yaakov was inconsolable for 22 years. And one of the reasons for that is because somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew Yosef was still alive. There was no comfort to be had when your child is missing and not active. So they basically demoted him He was no longer considered a leader. They kind of kicked him out. It says that they even kind of kicked him out of the tents a little bit. It's not clear exactly what that means, but they kind of sent him on his own way. And we don't like you anymore. You messed us up. Now we're all in trouble. Our father's inconsolable. Like, we don't approve.
Also because of this thing with 12?
No, he was still considered one of the 12 tribes. They just kind of sent him on his own journey a little bit. Why is this important? So it actually tells us about Yehudah's first wife, that she was daughter of Shua the Canaanite. Now, there's different opinions on how we translate Canaanite, because as you're all kind of wondering, how is it that Yehudah married a Canaanite? Like Yaakov,
daughter.
Yitzchak,
His daughter.
his daughter, but she would still be considered a Canaanite, right? Like
Who's that one?
Shua, the merchant, Shua the Canaanite. That's how it literally, the pasuk says that Yehudah married the daughter of Shua the Canaanite. All right?
And not one of the twin sisters.
And not one of the twin sisters. But how is it possible that he married a daughter of a Canaanite?
This is after he left the other tribes.
Yes.
And he was out on his own.
Right. So there's different explanations. People literally translate it not as Canaanite, but as merchant. Or the Ashli says that because he was no longer with his brothers so much, and he basically sojourned among the Canaanite, he married this woman. Whether or not she was a Canaanite is up for discussion, but she was there. She wasn't part of Yaakov's family, and therefore it affected his family in that way.
It wasn't that the Shua was really a Jew, but he just lived with the Canaanite?
No,
Okay.
no one says that ever. Yeah, it says that he's a Canaanite, she was a merchant, basically.
Oh.
He had bad friends, Yehudah. All right, they did not approve of his friends, and it affected his family and brought down his family, according to the Ashli. That's why, according to Ashli, they use the term Canaanite for the merchant here, because to show us how adversely affected Yehudah's family is. All right, now, the Sforno says that the reason Yehudah's two oldest sons died is because he married this Canaanite woman. They were not righteous, were not good sons, and therefore they died.
Do we even know who they were?
Yeah, of course we do. They're there. Onan, and Shua are Yehudah's three sons from his first marriage. Right? And the Forno says that the death of his first two sons was Nida for the grief that he caused Yaakov for allowing Yosef to be sold and showing him that Yosef was dead. All right. Now I kind of like, so the Ramban says that Onkelos translate Canaanite as merchant because Yaakov's sons obeyed the pledge from Abraham not to marry a Canaanite. This is the question, like, did Yehudah really marry a Canaanite, or was she something different? So the sages disagreed in the Gemara, and it's like Gemara and Megillah, according to Rabbi Yehudah, Shvatim had twins and they married them. All right. According to Rabbi Nechemiah, they married Canaanites. Now, there's a question on Rabbi Nechemiah, does it mean that they married women of the land who weren't actually Canaanites but were living in the land? Or do they marry actual Canaanite women? The whole Rabbi Nechemiah disagrees with Rabbi Yehudah that they didn't marry sisters because according to laws that came out after the flood, you could not marry your sister from the same mother. Rabbi Yehudah says
they could shuffle them
exactly.
around, right?
Rabbi Yehudah says they've married other twin sisters from the different mothers. Remember, we have three other mothers to choose from. So it's unclear. There's no clear answer if she was Canaanite or not, but she wasn't from the house of Yaakov. That we do know. All right. So now back to Tamar. Tamar was married to Yehudah's sons in the first marriage.
Would she marry them if they were? I mean, she was also miyuches. She had a
right, but she was married to Yaakov's house. They were still from Yaakov's house. They're from Yehudah.
Okay.
All right. So Tamar's first marriage was Yehudah's son Er. Now Er thought Tamar was beautiful, beyond anything. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So he did not want her to get pregnant. He didn't want to mar her beauty.
Mhm.
So he withdrew from her and did not do things. Now, how old he could have been, somewhere between 18 and 20, most people say, maybe even younger, because he was still considered a youth.
And she was 140.
I only saw one person say that she was young.
Okay.
Things were different then.
I guess so.
So then we get to Yehudah's second son, Onan, who he gives to Tamar as an Ibum marriage. Never right marriage in English, but Ibum, basically. And we get into the rules of Ibum a little bit. And Onan also did the same thing that did for two reasons. One, that she was beautiful, and one, because from his understanding of Ibum, the firstborn child, if it was a son, would be considered to be of his brother's seed. Now, according to our understanding of Hilchos Ibum, it has no practical effect on your child. It's on a mystical level that your brother still has children and descendants in this world. It's not a practical thing. If you were to get called up, or you get called up and own it, or there's no practical implications that we were able to find or understand. Now, we don't really do Ibum today because we're not on that level in order to do it L'Shem Shemaim, so we only do Chalitza. So laws of Ibum are not quite as clear as they might have been once upon a time, but we do Chalitza today, where we take off shoe, spit, and say, we don't want to marry this woman, or release her. Yehudah was unaware of what caused his son's death. So Tamar said, give me your third son. But Yehudah said, no, he's too young, and you're a killer wife. You've already been married twice.
Didn't he promise her that he would give her?
He said later, he's too young now, let him grow up. But he didn't really.
But he didn't tell her that. He just
No.
got it.
So there's an idea that a woman who has been widowed twice should not get remarried. She's considered a killer wife, a black widow.
Right.
Yes, a black widow. There's all different mystical ideas as why that could be. Nothing that I could explain to you clearly. Something about the first husband still being attached. It's all very mystical, and we're not talking about actual murder here today. We're just, there's reasons why these women shouldn't get remarried.
Yeah, who's been with her twice, but it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
So that was Tamar, and that was one of Yehudah's concerns. And one of the reasons that Yehudah was so unwilling to give Shelah at this time is because according to Chazal, was maybe 12 at the time of his marriage to Tamar. And he was worried that Shelah wouldn't really be able to do things and, wasn't capable. So, and he was worried that Tamar was a black widow. So the Chasam Sofer finds it strange that Yehudah's worried about Tamar being a black widow. Because with the mitzvah of Yibum, we do not worry about such things. And the marriage to Sheila would have been a Yibum marriage. So he says that he must be worried that Yibum will not be good. In other words, that Sheila would not be capable of doing things, or he was not capable of doing them properly. Not being able to do them correctly. My husband says that it literally says that he would have been, but he was very young at the time, so there was no way of knowing that could be. So maybe it won't be good, even which would give you a cause to worry. But it doesn't really make so much sense because it shows like a lack of emunah, and we know that they had tremendous emunah. Like, what's happening here? And Chasam Sofer says these are improbable scenarios. So why is he worried about them? Then if he was so worried about Tamar being a black widow or Sheila not being capable, then why wasn't he worried about burning Tamar at the stake? Like, what proof do we have that she's actually Shane's daughter? Only because Shane claimed to be her father, and that's how we know legitimacy. Because the father takes responsibility for the child. There's no other way. We don't. Obviously, the mother comes from others. When we have no way of proving who the father actually is, especially without DNA testing, which they didn't have then, right? So maybe she wasn't really the daughter of a Cohen,
The fact that he withheld
He had
the
to give
third
over,
son
he had to
was
give over his son. That was
Yeah.
to
brutal.
withhold the third son, that's not correct.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that he wasn't quite 9 yet, but they say that he wasn't playing by the rules. Cosmo Zipper says this, and then that's why he says Tamar was more righteous than me. All right.
Well, I thought that.
There's more
Could be some
one
other things
reason
that-
for that also,
yeah.
but here this is what he brings.
So maybe I always thought it had to do with that he would have put to take someone that it was his responsibility or something like that, and therefore she is,
We're gonna get to that at the end.
whatever, but, yeah.
Through the story, we go through the story, but the Cosmo Sofer brings it here, and so I brought it in. So the Amar Dever brings down the following ideas for us. Tamar, it must be important because the Torah actually tells us her name.
I'm sorry.
Tamar must be an important woman because the Torah actually tells us her name. And if you think about it, the only other wife we know of is Osnas, who we assume was daughter of Dinah, but that itself is a medrash. And so she must be important because we don't know the names of the other wives of the tribes. Like they're not mentioned at all. It says, these are the sons of Asher, these are the sons of Reuben. It doesn't say anything about who their mothers were. And definitely, if they had twin sisters, we don't hear their names ever. So we know Dinah because the whole story that happened last week with Dinah, we know that Yaakov had a daughter, Dinah, Leah Davin, right? And so we don't really get to know the names of women so much. It's just, they don't tell us unless it's important. So why was Tamar married off to such a younger man? According to the Emek Dever, Yehudah wanted a big family, and his wife was no longer able to have children after Sheila, and she also died later on. But at this point, she's still alive, apparently, and she's no longer able to have children after her. So he thought he had children through his sons. And it says that for a man who wants a big family, then you marry an older woman to a younger guy, you marry a younger woman to an older man. All right, everybody got that? No?
Not exactly.
You marry an older woman to a younger guy because the guy still has lots of seed and the woman is mature already, and you marry a younger woman to an older man because the guy's seed doesn't really matter what age he is, but he needs a young woman in order to be able to have children. All right, it's a little like it is what it is.
Okay.
That's according to Rabbi Yochanan and the Gemara. Like, all right, and you could have thought it would be disrespectful to his father-in-law to take a second wife at this point when his wife is still alive, so he married off his children to Tamar. So the Emek Dever asked if Yehudah was so worried about Tamar that he prevented her from marrying Sheila, then why didn't he talk to her? Why didn't he explain to her what he was worried about?
To accuse her of being Black Widow?
No, to explain his worries about Sheila, that his son would be incapable, that he would be enough, that it wouldn't be good evil, etc. And if it was because she was worried that she'd be a Black Widow, why didn't he just tell her, I don't think you should get married again. You lost 2 husbands already. He didn't talk to her. And from this, the Emek Dever summarized that he did not know how his kids died. And he summarized that Yehudah summarized that they were just too young to be married. That's why he wanted to wait when it came to marrying Sheila. Better? All right. So now we get to Tamar's at the crossroads. All right, she's waiting for Yehudah. It's a place called Pesach Anayim. That's what the pasuk calls it, Pesach Anayim. Tamar said at Pesach Anayim.
At this point, his wife has died.
Yes, it doesn't say exactly when she died. It just says that his wife died. Pesach Anayim literally means opened eyes, which according to Rashi means the crossroads, a place which you can see in all directions. Maybe like, you're standing in dark, on dark star, you can kind of look in 3 or 4 different directions and see, So there are a couple different explanations on what it means that she was at the crossroads. Chazal did not like this explanation. She would literally be sitting at the crossroads. And he said it's not possible for her to actually have been at the crossroads, and therefore they darshan that she was at the crossroads to the entrance of Avram's tent, where all the wayfarers passed. Now, why is Avram's tent still standing? There's apparently a Gemara that says it kind of just became like tents for people who needed a place to sleep. Kind of like Bedouin tents or nomadic people. Tents just
Like
kind of
what happened in San Francisco.
right. Okay. The tents were still up for whatever reason, or she sat at the place where his tents would have been. Because Avram's tents are known for Noxus Orchim, so everybody could go and be welcome there. And the Gemara says on that it was Avram's tent because all eyes looked towards the opening of his tent.
Yeah.
4 openings, exactly. So you can see in all directions his tent, 4 openings, and Noxus Orchim, right? It also says that it could be that she just lifted up her eyes. That's what it means. Opened her eyes, she lifted up her eyes, and she saw Yehudah coming. Right. So she was waiting there for Yehudah, who was on his way to the town of Timnah. It was a sheep shearing day. He was going to oversee the shearing of the sheep. Based on a pasuk in Shmuel base, Chazal says that it would have been a day of celebration. So Yehudah would have been in an uplifted mood when he came upon. And because sheep shearing, I guess it's like a working mentality. You get it's like profit, right? You celebrate sharing of sheep, celebrate the money you're gonna get from all the hard work, and so that's that. He would have been in a good mood, and yeah, he didn't actually want to go to Tamar. He tried to pass by her many times, but the road kept turning back to Tamar. There was Mala that pushed him towards Tamar. Like I said, there's supernatural elements into this. There was no reason for a tzaddik of Yehudah's stature to stop and be with Tamar. Hashem wanted it to happen. So he made it happen. Did you ever wonder how that you didn't actually recognize Tamar at the
She
crossroads?
was disguised, it says.
So there's an opinion that she was disguised. But what does that mean?
Veil over
Veil.
her face.
Okay, so let's see. The Medrash brings that she always wore a vexed expression in her father-in-law's home.
She always wore what?
A vexed expression,
Vexed.
That's it.
like an expression of discomfort, disgust.
What, can you spell that?
V-E-X. Vexed. V-E-X-E-D.
Ah, like sort of angry kind of thing.
Angry.
Yeah.
Jen.
It also brings the idea that she was veiled in his house. So if she was veiled in his
Oh,
house,
that he wouldn't recognize her. She was unveiled.
exactly. All right. So it tells us that she was veiled also at the time of the meeting, but we could be that she actually wasn't, because otherwise he should have recognized her. But anyways, we learned from the idea that she was veiled in Yehudah's house, that college had to be extra careful in their in-laws' home, especially father-in-law's home, to act modestly. There's Gemara in Megillah, which says that Rabbi Shmuel ben Nachmani, the name of Rabbi Yonasan, every bride who is modest in the home of her father-in-law will merit to come from her kings and prophets. All right. So we know that Tamar stayed veiled in her father-in-law's house, and therefore she, as a testament to this modesty, she merited to have David Melech come from her. All right. Chazal compared Tamar and Rivka, both wearing veils, and they both merited to have twins. So we see that modesty brings about extra merits, and you can have more things come about because of it. All right, so either she was veiled or she wasn't veiled. He didn't recognize her at the crossroads. It depends how you hold that she was veiled, and therefore he couldn't see her face. But it says that she was veiled in her father-in-law's home, so I went with that she wasn't veiled.
Maybe it was a different color.
She was wearing a shaker. Usually she wears a snood. Confuses me every time.
Oh, in her house, she had black, and then she had bright pink coming out.
It doesn't say, but there is also an opinion that she was not veiled at the crossroads. Like I said, he tried to keep going, but the road kept turning back to her. But so he didn't recognize her face, right? He didn't know who she was. Fine, whether she's male or not. But what about her voice? How did she not recognize her voice? So they say it was because it was out of context. Like Yitzhak with Yaakov. When Yaakov came to the brachas and he was dressed like Esav, Yitzhak got confused because he said it's the voice of Yaakov, but it's the hands of Esav. When something's out of context, it makes it harder to recognize. Like this new versus Shaitel thing. When you see someone out of context, you're like,
Right.
who is that person? Chazal actually it tells us how careful Yehudah was to make sure that Tamar was kosher for him, so to speak. I couldn't come up with a better word than kosher, but he asked her 3 questions. He asked her, "Are you a Jewess?" She says, "I'm a proselyte." She cares. He asked her if she's married. She says no. Asked her if her father has promised her to someone. She says she's an orphan. She was already gone by this point, and okay, so only after he was satisfied with that she was, available to him, did he be with her. As payment or an appreciation for what happened, he promised her a kid goat from his flock and he returned home. And she said, "Well, what do I have that, will ensure that you fulfill your promise? What will you give me?" And he says, "Well, what do you want?" And he gives her his staff, his signet ring, and his cloak. And we're going to get into that as to why. Anyways, because I'll say that he was punished with the kid goat because he deceived his father with the goat. So just like he was deceived, he deceived his father. So she gets these 3 signs of who he was, right? The Endeavor explains that each of these 3 things had special significance. His signet ring showed that he was the head of court, whatever that means. The cloak is something only important people wore on top of their clothes. It is possible it was made out of Techeles, and Yaakov's sons wore Techeles to remind them to be Sekava. It's not clear. People usually translate the word cloak as thread, so it could be just some of it was Techeles and therefore tzitzis, but it's unclear because most commentators translate it
What's the
as.
word in Hebrew for cloak?
I don't have it. I'm sorry, but if you look at most English translations, it says cloak in this story. And the staff is a symbol of monarchy. And according to the Vodas Israel in the same medrash, these things symbolize kingship and Mashiach. His signet ring refers to Malchus. The thread refers to Sanhedrin as the head of the Sanhedrin. Apparently wore a special cloak. And his staff symbolizes Mashiach, as will be the staff that he will use, just like Moshe used the exact same staff. All right, so it wasn't just any staff. The staff was,
He was willing to give that to her.
he was willing to give that to her. He planned on getting it back. He had faith in this woman that, like,
That's
All right.
surprising.
It's like an expensive goat.
Yeah.
I mean, again, remember, this is all very supernatural at this point. He wasn't planning on being with her in the first place, and he gives her these 3 very expensive things that are very
Now
special,
he's going without his cloak.
without his ring, without his
And
cloak,
without
without
his
his
staff.
staff.
Without his staff. Well,
Like-
everything.
He's basically said, "I'll give you everything." Like, it's a little weird, but he did. It's supernatural. All Hashem behind the scenes. All right, so it says Tamar was very proud of her pregnancy and that she knew she was carrying twins. She used to go in his bathhouse and say, "Make way, I'm carrying twins, I'm carrying kings." It's a little bit strange. There's this woman, she's not married, and she's so very proud of the fact that she's pregnant. It's a little strange. But Tamar knew that her destiny was to have children from Yaakov's house, to be part of that family. They were Kodesh, the prophecy, through some way she knew this was, so she was very proud, and she knew she was carrying twins. And she knew that one day they would end up having kings. All right. So word got back to Yehudah that his daughter-in-law was pregnant. And Yehudah did not have any clue that he was the one who laid with Tamar. So he convenes a based in of his father and grandfather. why is he convenient based in? It was a disgrace to his family that his daughter-in-law should show up pregnant and be proud of it.
Took him a long time to get that goat to her.
He actually, it says that he tried sending her a goat,
And there was nobody.
but there
there.
was nobody there.
Yeah.
Didn't know where to find his heart. That was a
Yeah.
good one.
I'm sorry, just time out for a
Mhm.
second. Remind me again, the first son didn't want to have kids,
Because she was
Because she was so
beautiful.
and so that he was punished for that. The second one didn't want to have kids and something else.
Also because she was beautiful, and also because he didn't want his child to be the seed of his brother.
Ah, no.
Right? So she refused to name who she'd been with. She didn't want to publicly embarrass Yehudah. So what about these signs that she had? Where were they? She couldn't find them. It says Satan took them and hid them. Like I said, supernatural. She's getting ready to burn at the stake. She's not willing to name Yehudah. She doesn't want to publicly embarrass him. She cries out to Hashem. Hashem, you know what my intentions were. They're the same as mine. Just doing what you wanted. Help me, please. Hashem sends the angel Michael down to reveal to her the signs. Whether he
Where
brought them back, it's not that it just says that he opened her eyes and she was able to see them.
And there they were.
And there they were. So she then sends them to the beast, in other words, to Yehudah. And Yehudah then takes responsibility. And so, but why does it matter that she sent the signs? Like, if Yehudah hadn't taken responsibility,
Oh,
we
he could have
care-
just said, oh, I never saw those before.
Right, he could have, but, so, part of the question here is, was she really liable for the death penalty? Okay, she wasn't married, she wasn't engaged. Yehudah had never given her Sheila, she was not married any longer. Her first two marriages might have even been considered null and void, did they actually go far enough into her that they consummated the marriage before the drawing? There's some question about that. So she wasn't married, she wasn't engaged. Why did she die of death? They say that because Yehudah is from the house of kings from Malchus, and it's disgrace and embarrassment that they don't know who she slept with, that she was deserving the death penalty. And it just shows that she was sleeping with a great man, lessens that embarrassment, maybe releases that
Well,
death penalty.
He was also obligated to her, not for his, because his wife had died. He also had a responsibility to marry her, no?
Could be.
I'm not sure that it-
I don't
that
know.
case
That's-
was a legal,
You'd have to look up Philippians one. I don't know enough to.
which is condemned then, his son and him.
You'd have to. I don't know the halachas even well enough to answer that for you. Sorry.
Or to make it simpler, if he's responsible to give his son to her.
No, but I think it might have been also that he could have been him. I'm not sure. but
Anyway, so this whole idea is from Deborah that she was liable for the death penalty because Yehudah was like a king, and therefore was embarrassment in the house of Malchus.
Right, but
And
once
then once it was a great man, she was would have been no need to burn. Because I said, what's the matter? Like, Yehudah wasn't willing to take responsibility. What would have it mattered if she was with a great man? Like, who cares? But apparently it does matter. So, right, the Rambam was the one who brought the question. And
Or at that point too, it was his children that were going to be burned.
but he
That might have also,
yeah, but in the beginning, you didn't know that, right?
right, but once he realized it, he wasn't going to just be quiet.
So the Ramban finds that we do not find a woman who's waiting for Yibum to be married or engaged. Therefore, she would not have been liable for the death penalty, even if she was the daughter of a Kohen.
Say it again.
If she's,
Say it again.
there should be evil, but it hasn't happened yet.
But
She's not
she's
considered engaged.
not considered engaged, and we don't find someone who's waiting for Yibum to be liable for the death penalty for sleeping with someone else. It's not the right thing to do, but here it was. Let's change my mind. All right. So when the pasuk says that she's more righteous than me many, the me many part is Hashem talking about than me. Right? She's more righteous than me. That is Hashem talking. It means it's me many for me. It's an Hashem arranged for all this to take place. Stop thinking, right? No, it's a little less like So Yehudah questions himself here. He says, I see how righteous she is. Why did I delay to marry her off to my son? She's clearly more righteous than me. So clearly this is all arranged from Shemaiah. That's Dever brings that
Well,
down.
both of them were, each of them were, except for his not giving the son, whatever. Hashem Shemaim,
Yeah, I mean-
she doesn't want to embarrass him. He's not willing to have somebody killed because of his.
Right. So
embarrassment
it's a
or
good point.
but
Like
he's
think
willing
about
to be
it.
embarrassed.
Think about it. He's sitting in a base with his father and his grandfather that he called,
Right.
and he stands up and says, "These
His
are
father and
mine."
his grandfather,
Yaakov and Yitzchak. They were on the base in. That's who the base in considered. Yaakov, Yitzchak, Yehudah. Three
And
wives.
She has the fire at her feet, and he said,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, it was me.
These are mine. I take responsibility. She didn't do anything wrong. All right. So the Avodas Yisrael posits on this that had the brothers not told Yosef, Yehudah would not have married the daughter of a merchant or a Canaanite, which meant his children would.
Sorry,
If the brothers had not sold Yosef,
right.
Which was with the heading up, Yehudah heading up that gang, yeah.
right? Okay.
Yes.
Then he would not have married the daughter of Shua the merchant or the Canaanite. Instead, he would have married one of his twin sisters, presumably, or someone who would have been acceptable, right? And he would have had parents that way. But because he married the daughter of Canaanite, his sons were not righteous as their father. And yet, because of the sale, Yosef revealed some inherent flaw that needed to be fixed. Doesn't say what, just that there was an issue there that he was willing to sell Yosef. So in defeats, Peretz came about in a hidden way. And it wasn't just Peretz, it was his twin brother also, but he came about in a hidden way. And they compare Peretz and his brother to Yaakov and Esau, but I didn't get into that because it's a different story. And that Yehudah did not know who Tamar was at the time is the hidden part. And had no intention of having kids with her. Like I said, Yehudah tried to pass by her, tried to keep walking, turn back again, keep walking, or turn back again, turn back into her, come back to me, not going anywhere. So Tamar sat there and davened to Kodesh Baruch Hu, please do not let me leave Yehudah empty-handed. And then he should see her intentions were the same to mine, and therefore she got pregnant on the first time. And just remember we discussed back in Rivka that women didn't really get pregnant the first time back then. Something to do with the hymen and having to break it, and so apparently this was a thing here too. That's why it could be that her marriages were not actually consummated. So she should not leave Yehudah empty-handed. It was her defeat. So the Chavetz Chaim brings the whole story of Yehudah and Tamar. That the more important something is, the harder the Satan tries to make sure it doesn't happen. So why was Tamar being part of Yaakov's house so important? Because she was the foremother of Mashiach. And we see that when it comes to time to punish Tamar for what he thought was her indecency, Satan hid the 3 signs like he said. He really did not want this to happen. He knew that Mashiach was going to come from Tamar's line. Did not want this to happen. The Satan. It's her, angel of Esau, whatever you want to call him. He did not want this to happen. He was not interested in letting this happen. Everything in his power to make sure it would not happen. And only because Tamar cried out to Hashem there when she's, fired at her feet. And Hashem, please show me these signs. What happened to the signs? My intention for the same Shemaim, otherwise he would not let me get pregnant. Like, did the signs reappear? Rav Dessler brings one to Me'ahu that sometimes things have to come out by trickery, otherwise they would never happen. We see this from Yaakov tricking his father to get the brachos that were rightfully his. We also see it in the story of Tamar and Yehudah. Tamar tried time and again to get Yehudah to give her youngest son, and she tried it the proper way. And it was not her fault that her husbands were not righteous. She wanted to have children through Yaakov's house because she knew through, of course, that she was supposed to. She's supposed to be the foremother of kings and Mashiach. And she tried to do the proper way. She married Yehudah's sons. She waited for the third one. It wasn't happening. because her actions were L'Shem Shemaim, the Medrash says that she had a level of prophecy which revealed to her that she was before mother of kings. She was rewarded with righteous descendants, even though she had to trick Yehudah. She was given Rus, and therefore Daven Melech through her tricking of Yehudah. And Rav Deather brings that the whole lesson from this story is that when you have committed what you think is a sin, and when confronted with your actions, is to admit what happened and not to be embarrassed about it. Not to do tshuva, but you should admit to what you did was wrong, like Yehudah did, and not be embarrassed to admit it when you need to admit it to prevent something else from happening.
Right, don't make it worse.
Don't
Own
make
up-
it worse.
Own up to it.
Exactly. Right, and when he said, think about it from, Yehudah's perspective, he's sitting at this based in his table, but he called for his father and his grandfather, and he said, "Oh, it was me. Sorry. I'll take responsibility. Don't burn her. Take her away from the fire. Those children are mine. This was meant to be." But that takes a lot of, courage. A lot of
If she
strength
got-
of will.
right. Yeah, she could have gotten burned and
Yeah.
the secret goes
Would
with
have
her.
died with her. All right. So there's a parallel that can be drawn between the actions of Tamar waiting Yehudah at the crossroads and tricking him by not revealing her identity, because she knew through her person she was destined to have children through Yehudah's house, and the story of Potiphar's wife and Yossi. Potiphar's wife saw through the stars that she was destined to have children with the house of Yossi. So she was also, her actions were also L'Shem Shemaim. Now she got it wrong, versus Tamar got it right, that she was doing the right thing, versus Potiphar was
Maybe through her
who
daughter.
was not her daughter, and they say Osnat wasn't really her daughter, but we see from there that when you raise someone, they become like your own children. So don't listen to astrology, because astrology gets it wrong.
Oh, that's what she heard it?
So there's a lot of lessons in Tamar's story. We do not embarrass someone in public. We shouldn't embarrass anyone to begin with, but definitely not in public. We should go out of our way to embarrass someone. And there's a question, did she have to die in order not to embarrass someone? Technically, it depends on how you think about the 3 sins that you have to die for, and if the avak from those sins are something you have to die for as well. If it is, then yes, she would have been liable to die instead of embarrassing publicly. Others say definitely not. You do not have to jump into the furnace or to avoid embarrassing someone in public.
I suppose they knew they were not gonna die there, but his wife said they burnt their feet instead of embarrassing the spokesperson that they were.
Right, yes, they do bring that story.
They were not gonna die there, but burn their feet ain't so much.
It was actually only his feet that got burnt, not his wife's feet. And she said to me, "It's okay, I do more chesed than you. I actually give them food and stuff, versus you just give them
What
money."
story is this? What
It's a
is
story
in
in the Gemara.
What
Yeah,
is
she
it?
says, stand on my feet. Stand on top of my feet.
I didn't read that, but it could be.
Yeah,
Rav Uka and his wife, Ukva, were very careful to give tzedakah when they shouldn't embarrass someone, so they did it, would run from person to person's house and leave money on their street. One morning he was later than usual, and some guy, one of the people he was giving money to, wanting to know who was leaving money for. So, they heard footsteps approaching, so they quickly jumped into this open oven, so they should not be seen. And his feet got burnt. His wife's feet did not get burnt, but so this person would not be embarrassed to see this great sage
Right.
giving him money.
There are many stories about like
I did hear that a long time
Rabbi
ago.
Moshe Feinstein, when he went and got into a car and
Oh,
the
yeah.
driver.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
finger.
And he just, I know, but he didn't want to embarrass him. That was,
We also learn how much reward we get from tznius. In all aspects of our life, we see that King David, who valued the midah of tznius, this was his midah. So much so that he not even King Shaul, who was liable for death penalty, was considered royalty, and Shaul went into the cave to do his business. He's looking at me. Shaul, David was chasing Shaul. Shaul, you need to go do things privately. So he went into a cave far into a cave and did things as privately as possible. And because of
Ah,
this, David Melech chose not to kill him at that point because he was showing sneers. And David Melech lived his life by this attribute of sneers. We-
Shaul was demonstrated all through his life, but he didn't have he didn't do that assertiveness you have to do when you're the head of the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also learn about the laws of Yibum from Tamar story and adultery. Right? She was liable in theory for the death penalty for being a daughter of a Cohen and etc. and for being married to the house of Malchus. Maybe we should just not marry into king's houses if we're gonna make mistakes. It might be something to consider.
I didn't do that with my kids, made sure they didn't.
Yeah.
Half of Malcolm's.
That's just scared cats, it's again, it's the Shem Shemaim.
Right. Exactly. It was all the same time, and Yehudah's wife was dead at this point, and so it could have been considered a marriage. It's unclear, and there was no adultery taking place. So
I don't think it depends on not being married or.
I don't know,
There's
but
a way
it's
when you could marry more than one.
I don't know exactly, but Yehudah wasn't planning on marrying her, and he didn't want to take a second wife when his wife was still alive. So in theory, there would have been adultery taking place, so we don't. Men don't get the same punishment as women when this happens, but there was no wife anymore in Yehudah's house. Which is the point. So that is the story.
The story of Ruth also has evil in it.
Yeah.
Wow, but when the list of the people going down to Mitzrayim and then later on with the list of the tribes, do we see that there's more than one wife?
I can't tell. There's only 3 women mentioned going down to Egypt: Yocheved, Sarah, and Dinah. We know that Yocheved was born literally as they entered into
Dina
Egypt.
is mentioned.
Dinah is mentioned. I think that so she's one of the 3 women mentioned in the 70 souls who go down to Egypt. And there's an idea that Dinah had a boy with Shechem, and that one that says Shaul ben Kanani from the house of Shimon. It's Dinah's son Shaul. And the list is 70 souls.
And not Osna?
It's a medrash that Osnat was her daughter. Most people believe that medrash, and but it mentions Shaul ben Kanani in the list of 70 souls who got to Egypt. He's listed under Shimon's house, and they say that it's because he was Dinah's son from Shechem.
Can you give me the next time Eliyahu, you have the sword?
I don't know if he wrote me exact.
Huh?
I don't know if he wrote down where it was.
Okay.
That Dina was the sister, no, she was not.
She was not anybody's twin sister. But remember, Shimon promised her that he would take care of her and be with
Yeah.
her.
She. Yeah.
So it says that Dinah lived in Shimon's tent.
He
and there's-
married her, though.
depends
Who
who
you're
asked,
talking to.
because he wasn't really allowed to marry her because she was from the same mother and father. That's incest. So,
Okay, good work.
well,
You didn't hear, did you hear Rabbi Michael's last week?